Hey everyone, welcome to the Fasting for Life podcast. My name is Dr. Scott Whitier, and I'm here as always with my good friend and colleague, Tommy Welling. Good afternoon to you, sir.
Hey, Scott, how are you?
Doing fantastic, my friend. Excited to have a great conversation with you today. The jumping off point is going to be one that really hits home for both of us and both of our families. And some of our goals here at Fasting for Life, which is to help change the path of the generational health of our families, but also our friends, our circle of influence, most importantly, our country. And it's really going to have a conversation around, and this came out of a Levels article, what can weight tell you about your metabolic health? So we're going to talk a lot about metabolic health, health metrics, the flaws in the system. But really, the second part of this, or the adjunct conversation around this, is the data that just came out from the CDC about the epidemic that we're seeing from the National Health and Nutrition Examine Study, the NHANES, run by the CDC. So we're going to give you some actionable things on how to implement a fasting lifestyle, how to talk to your kids about food and healthy food choices. So I'm really excited to kind of talk through this, give you some of the things that we do, but most importantly, come from this big picture standpoint of how do we get the weight off and keep it off, and how that's related to your metabolic health, and not just a silly little number on the scale. So if you're new to the podcast, welcome in. It's going to be a fun conversation. If you want to know more about how fasting and the fasting lifestyle has transformed my life, Tommy's life, our journeys, why we do what we do week in and week out, why we have the weekly podcast, the resources, the blueprints, the guides, the challenges, the coaching, all of the things that we do, head back to episode 0 and episode 1, give it a listen. It'll give you a little bit more insight into who we are and why we do what we do. And if you're a long-term listener, I want to give you a shout out. Thank you for sharing, liking, subscribing, reviewing, and really just continuing the momentum that we've built with Fasting for Life. And we're just so grateful to have you on this fasting lifestyle journey with us. So Tommy.
Yes, sir.
Before we hop in, let's set the stage on kind of where we are from a metabolic conversation standpoint. And then we'll talk about the staggering statistics that just came out from the latest data dump from the 2-year data from August 2021 to 2023 from the National Health and Nutrition Examination Survey. So they're going to tie directly together in this concept of metabolic health. What is it? How do we manage it? What metrics should we be looking at? What labs matter? Is there a subset of the population that can be carrying extra weight in the overweight and obese category and truly still be metabolically healthy? And that's where the Levels article really did a good job is, you know, how does the research show the metabolic dysfunction irrespective of weight? So what are those metabolic measurements that we should be focusing on as we're trying to, you know, get our health back on track here in the US and then obviously extrapolated worldwide, where we see this epidemic of lifestyle, chronic conditions, cardiometabolic issues, etc. And the narrative really is that obesity is linked to over 200 chronic diseases, but that weight alone does not accurately reflect an individual's metabolic health. And we'll talk about BMI, central obesity, visceral adiposity. And ultimately, the big picture takeaway is what can we do to get and regain control? Because we know that 74% of the American population is either overweight or obese. We're going to talk about how that relates to these other metabolic issues, type 2 diabetes, metabolic syndrome, heart disease, etc., even some cancers. But most importantly, like, what can we do about it, and where should our target be when we're looking at this long-term journey of not being the 95% of folks that can lose the weight, but then have trouble keeping it off for that, as we know, that 2 to 3 year mark is where we have that weight regain cycle that takes place. And really just once and for all, getting our targets and our sights on what truly drives the needle so we can change the generational health. For you and I know that's a motivating factor for our families, but more importantly for you, the listener, how you can lead in that situation where you can have things you can control and you can shape the narrative of the generational path for your, either if you're a grandparent or a parent, for your kids and or grandkids.
Yeah, absolutely. And if you're an aunt or an uncle or you don't have a family that you need to influence in this way. Your friends, your close circle, your coworkers, your inspiration can be anywhere you go. And it starts visually. It starts as soon as somebody maybe notices that you look a little more energetic, or that maybe you've dropped a few pounds, or maybe you're making some more interesting choices as far as the clothes that you're wearing or the situations you'll put yourself into. That reflects, as you change, as you become a more metabolically fit and physically fit version of yourself. People will notice that eventually, and that inspiration is actually much more, much more impactful than trying to tell somebody what they need to be doing, or how you did it because you'd like them to make a change. That inspiration is really the powerful first seed for somebody else doing something right too, right?
Yeah, and I mean, combined between the two of us, we have 6 kids
Hmm.
under the age of 8, right? 3 and
Yep.
3.
Yep.
So we're speaking from a real life scenario of two people that struggled with making the math with the
Yep.
calorie in, calorie out model,
From
and work
childhood.
it from childhood and
Yep.
working out. For me, it started really early on. I'll spare all the details. You can go back, listen to episode 0, episode 1 if you're new, or if you want to recap if you've been with us for a while. My journey with having severe allergies and asthma, and being on a lot of prednisone and inhalers and medications,
Me too.
that led to excess weight gain, and then trouble playing sports, and then started lifting at an early age, and then did powerlifting, and then
Hmm.
I mean training for half marathons, and I've done everything, but I could never sustain those changes when it really came down to the lifestyle decisions that we were making. So the big picture
Yeah.
here is, as parents, as grandparents, it's not an external issue. It starts at home with us. So our choices around food, movement, and mindset really lay the path for generational health. Not initially for us, but then obviously we can pass that down, because the
Yeah.
old adage that, look at the 5 people you spend most of your time with, right? That's
Hmm.
what your life's going to look like too. So the the societal implications here too, is that we see these chronic conditions in certain families, air quotes, with genetic predispositions. Well, because we're under the same stresses, we live the same type of lifestyle. So the American landscape is facing a metabolic health crisis that now is striking younger and younger. So I just want to share the stats on the latest data dump as being a wake-up call for us, that nearly 1 in 3 U.S. adolescents, so about 33% of those ages from 12 to 17,
Hmm.
now meet the criteria for pre-diabetes.
Wow.
And that's up 5% from just a couple of years ago. So that's 8.4 million kids on a path not just toward type 2 diabetes, but also heart disease and stroke, potentially much earlier in life.
Wow.
Severe obesity has tripled since 2008. And we'll talk about the metabolic implications, that it's tripled since 2008, and it's strongly linked with the development of diabetes, insulin resistance, and what we'll talk about here in just a minute, metabolic syndrome.
Wow. Just the idea, like these things are, of course, just they can be detrimental. They can be, so tough to watch an older family, or, a parent or a grandparent go through. But the idea that, at a younger age, that our generation could be facing these things, instead of in our 70s or 80s, they might be 50s and 60s. And the next generation, our kids now, might be seeing these things, in themselves, or in their friends and their group in their 30s and 40s. Like that's a terrible thought, to me, and something that I would absolutely just really want to get the word out on this as much as possible, so that we can all collectively across the
Right.
world understand the implications of this, and how the trajectory is changing over the coming few decades. And like, this has been an accelerated curve. This has been a very, very quick acceleration just over the last few decades. So it's not like this has been changing over hundreds of years, or let alone thousands of years. No, this has been decades that this has been accelerating, and completely reversible as well. Like it starts with us and our influence on the older generations, but then also how we treat and communicate with the next generation as well.
So when we look at the different World Health Organization research kind of metrics that are looked at, the number one thing that's going to come up to categorize population data is going to be the BMI, or the body mass index. And the BMI has its flaws. We did an entire episode on body roundness index, which I think is much better. We're going to talk about waist to height ratio, waist circumference. You can grab the insulin assessment. It's a free resource that we have. It's in the show notes, where it'll show you how to measure your waist circumference, and then how to calculate your waist height ratio, which is a much clearer indicator of underlying insulin resistance and metabolic dysfunction. Because the problem with BMI is someone who's 5'3" and weighs 170 pounds has a BMI of 30.1, as does someone that's standing at 5'10" and weighing 210 pounds, right? So BMI doesn't measure body fat percentage. It relies on the number on the scale, which we really can't distinguish fat from metabolically favorable muscle composition. Right. So when we talk about, right now, my goal personally was always trying to lose weight, because I was always the big bulky guy, weightlifter, sport athlete. So I carry a lot more lean muscle tissue based on my most recent DEXA scan, 170 pounds about of lean muscle mass. So if I were to go to the BMI chart, I'm supposed to weigh about 170. Well, I guess I just have to get rid of all my organs and bones and skeleton and all that stuff.
Yeah, that makes sense.
So it's going to be really hard for me to fit into that category. So we need to look at body composition, not just that number on the scale. Because there's these things that we talked about, and we'll go over the list of what metrics we should be looking at. But the waist height ratio, and the waist circumference, right?
Yeah,
so
waist
that's
to hip ratio too.
Yeah, waist hip ratio. That's something that we'd want to be looking at versus a BMI. So we are not saying that BMI is the end all be all, but a lot of the studies that examine the interplay between weight and metabolic health use BMI. And according to that work, the central issue between obesity and poor health is insulin resistance. That you have a broken metabolic function in your body on how your body is burning energy that you're taking in, and or storing or burning stored fat, specifically in that central area of the belly for men and the lower abdomen and hip, upper thighs and hips for women.
Yeah, and that's where some of the misinterpretation can come from what's happening on the scale, because at any given weight, and depending on your history with diets and with exercise, and your lean mass percentage, like you were just referring to, Scott, you might know a time where you were at the same weight but felt very differently. Depending on what you're doing, what your activity level was, how you were actually eating, what your food choices were, if you were training for something physical versus not. And we've talked about the relatively sensitive term skinny fat before, things like that, where just body composition can be different based on the same number on the scale. So the scale is very one-dimensional, obviously, but so that's the trouble in just relying on it. So using some of these things like body roundness and waist to hip ratio and things like that are a good proxy for what really a DEXA scan is the gold standard for measuring visceral fat. So you can actually see what that looks like inside, around your internal organs, which is essentially where most of the risk factors for all of the development of type 2 diabetes and metabolic syndrome and all of these related comorbidities, the risk factor comes from your visceral fat. So if we're essentially looking at that, we can't just target visceral fat, but at the same time, when we're targeting general overall metabolic health, metabolic optimization and flexibility, we will be getting to visceral fat as well. And it will be decreasing. And it's also affected by things like sleep and stress, other factors that affect our overall metabolic health, definitely affect visceral fat as well. Food choices are a big one as well. Fructose and other sources of
ultra processed foods, obesogenic
Absolutely.
food environment, all those different types of things.
Yeah,
so
they lead to disproportional deposition of visceral fat.
Yeah, and you mentioned that earlier, like you may feel different at different points on your weight loss and health journey. People come to fasting to lose weight, and that's why we say let's create a strategy, let's create a plan to help you get the weight off, and then let's work on the lifestyle factors and the habits that actually reinforce those things. So fasting is like the accelerator. It's like the trump card for us, and this is what we found has worked really well for so many of you that are listening, have been on your journey. So we just want to kind of, step back for a second. Is at different points in my journey, there were times where I was, air quotes, healthier by the number on the scale
Mm-hmm.
and by my body composition, and I was chronically inflamed. My joints always hurt. I had low back problems. My sleep was off. My stress was high. My food choices weren't as great as or clean as they are now most of the time, but it was fitting into the equations of, yeah, I'm fine. I'm counting my calories, tracking my macros, I'm working out. But why do I feel like crap still? Like,
Yeah.
so when we talk about metabolic dysfunction, we're talking about insulin resistance, right? So insulin, fat burning versus fat storing, inflammation markers, unhealthy blood sugar patterns, right? All of those things can exist at any weight, even if
Right.
you're not just in one of those BMI categories. So true metabolic health includes blood sugar control, insulin and insulin sensitivity, insulin effectiveness, production, and insulin sensitivity, healthy blood lipids, ideal blood pressure, and healthy body composition, not just body weight. So some of the markers that we want to look at are like fasting glucose, A1C, LDL and HDL ratios, triglycerides, waist circumference, and those inflammation levels that I've been mentioning. So you can grab the resource that we have for the ideal ranges of those lab markers, because these are really the things, as well as the waist to height ratio and the waist circumference that we've talked about already, that are going to indicate whether you have that visceral adiposity, that iceberg analogy. If you have that fat that's centrally located, it has now been, how do I want to say this? It has been now looked at as a hormonally and metabolically active tissue.
Mm-hmm.
So this is something that's fueling more inflammatory insulin resistance and more inflammatory cytokines. So that's what leads the combination of obesity, excess weight, and insulin resistance that ties directly to what we talked about that we're seeing in these alarming statistics in kids. So type 2 diabetes used to be called adult onset. Now it's called type 2. Now we're seeing it more prevalent in younger kids at staggering levels that we shared earlier.
Mm-hmm.
So when you have the combination of obesity and insulin resistance and this visceral adiposity that's inside between the organs in your liver, this is directly related to type 2 diabetes and prediabetes, metabolic syndrome, so having three or more. So abdominal obesity that we talked about, high blood sugar, high blood pressure, high triglycerides, and low HDL. That's going to directly elevate your risk for heart disease. Then we have heart disease as its own category, where we know that insulin resistance and obesity are more prone to atherosclerosis, which is that chronic inflammatory response. We have heart disease, including heart attack and stroke, hypertension, and other heart conditions. We've talked at length at this podcast about how it's also related to cognitive dysfunction and dementia.
Yeah.
So oxidative stress and inflammation. Alzheimer's is now being referred to, not universally accepted yet, but as type 3 diabetes,
Mm-hmm.
right? And increasing of vascular dementia risk. And then we have this other massive category of lifestyle chronically induced disease process of cancer, where 40% of cancers that are diagnosed in the US now, because we all know someone that has heart disease, metabolic syndrome, diabetes, or cancer. Like if you just think about your circle of influence, right?
Yeah.
These specifically breast cancers in postmenopausal women, colon, rectum, and thyroid, liver, pancreas, and ovarian cancer, that chronic inflammation and insulin resistance is going to be a direct path to that 40% increased chance of that as well. Never mind non-alcoholic fatty liver disease, sleep apnea, GI acid reflux, osteoarthritis, sexual dysfunction, urinary incontinence.
Mm-hmm.
So the list, the connection points just continue on from, hey, we've got a number on the scale. I'm at a healthy weight versus, am I skinny fat? Am I metabolically healthy? Where should I be looking? And to me, it really starts, like we started the conversation today, Tommy, is it starts with us. It starts with the decisions we're making on a daily basis around food choices, around movement, and around mindset.
Yeah. And all of these cellular processes, all of the physiological systems in the body, they're all connected. The reason why all of these disease processes are related to metabolic flexibility and our hormonal response, insulin resistance, all of these things is because there's metabolically active tissue in all of the systems of the body. So when there's dysfunction in one place, it's not the hey, it's just a compartmentalized thing, like, oh, it's just a blood pressure issue. Well, no, it's not just a blood pressure issue. That's a smooth muscle issue. That's a vascular walls issue that then leads to other issues across the whole body. But the reason for that particular issue is also related to the same problem in the sexual dysfunction, in the dementia, or the chronic neurodegenerative issues that are going on, because the brain and the nervous tissue is the most metabolically active tissue in the whole body. So it makes sense why that would be affected disproportionately faster than the rest of the tissues in the body. And back to something else that you mentioned, which was just a disparity in muscularity across bodies. And so you have one issue where your musculature is disproportionately high. A lot of other folks have the opposite issue, where their musculature is disproportionately low, and the trouble
especially in the sedentary, tech-driven computer world that we are now versus when we used to work out in the fields all day.
Right. Oh, it's a totally different landscape. And then what that problem can mask is actually the skinny fat issue, which is where you're used to seeing a lower number on the scale. That number looks better. If your doctor is looking at that number, they might not. It might not flag an issue. You look at the BMI charts, everything looks good. It might even be showing underweight potentially, or just normal weight, whereas your normal weight right now should be overweight for you. Your body roundness index is high. Your visceral fat could actually be high because of your lower musculature. And now this is being masked by the number that's on the scale. And so the tricky part there is that you're probably not even being looked at as a candidate necessarily for type 2 diabetes, at least for the many, many years it takes to kind of build up as an iceberg underneath the surface. And so that's very problematic too. So understanding that these metabolic issues can be there regardless of the number that's on the scale is really, really important.
And this is where the conversation, and I won't go into it in depth, but just hitting it from a 30,000 foot view. And then I want to get into the practicality of how we have these conversations and how we model our lifestyle with fasting. I'm going to say this now. No, we're not telling you to tell your kids that are in growth stages to fast and restrict food. That's not what we're saying.
Right.
Okay. But I'm going to tell you how we talk about it in our family and how nothing good happens in the pantry after 8 p.m. Kitchen
Agreed.
closes after dinner. We'll talk about this in a minute. But when we're looking at this normal weight obesity or this metabolic obesity with normal body weight subcategories, and we're looking at this idea of, what metrics should we be looking at, right? We want to make sure that we're not missing the mark by just trying to define a category of people, right? We don't really, it doesn't really matter to us where you fit into one of these charts. What matters is what metrics should we be looking at for true metabolic health, and what actions can we take to make sure that we are changing our life, but then ultimately changing that generational path or passing those lifestyle changes down, because lifestyle does play an important role. So just to overview this kind of the talking points of what we should be looking at before we move into the practical conversation is waist height ratio and waist circumference. You can grab the insulin assessment. Body composition matters. Fat deposition, where is it? What type of fat is it? Subcutaneous versus visceral, right? What's your lean muscle tissue? What's your body composition look like? Metabolic syndrome, the criteria we mentioned earlier: cholesterol, blood pressure, blood sugar, triglycerides, and HOMA-IR, so insulin resistance. Lifestyle habits like nutritional choices and exercise, movement. And then this conversation around the mental health perspective of, we know there's a correlation between obesity and depression. They go hand in hand. And we know that this changes the brain physiology. We just recorded a podcast on this. And it's where we talked about the effects of the lag effect on what's happening to your brain from an emotional standpoint when you do, air quotes, binge or go off the rails or consume a whole bunch of refined processed, ultra processed foods, vacations, celebrations, life events, those types of things.
Alcohol does the same thing too.
Alcohol as well. So when we're looking at this from, it starts with us, where we started the conversation today. We have 74% of the population that's overweight or obese, 43% that I mentioned who meet the criteria for obesity. So what does that look like in a total weight, right? Like, what is the average American carrying in excess weight? Yes, we have lots of people in our coaching that had 100 pounds to lose. They met their goal and now they're working on maintenance, or they've had 80 pounds to lose, or they've lost 80 out of 100. But the majority, the average American male at 5'9", the average weight's 199 pounds. The average woman at 5'3" is 172. So to be in the, like, to kind of compartmentalize this into a, what is the excess weight that we want to focus on? For men, it's about 30 pounds of carrying excess weight. And for women, it's about 27.
So that's really interesting to know, because I've never seen or read that stat before, but it makes intuitive sense. I mean, just kind of looking around, talking to people in my social circle, etc. That number only typically goes up as we get older, because then it gets tougher. Hormone levels go down, which then decreases metabolic efficiency. A lot of times, lifestyle components and
Strength,
things like
range of
that.
motion,
Absolutely.
vitality. Yep.
It all tends to lead to small increases on the scale year after year after year. And so compartmentalizing that, putting some boundaries around that, getting some more consistency within our fasting lifestyle is really kind of the key to that. It's not just random longer fasts. It's not feeling like I always need to be on a diet roller coaster, or that I need to say no to everything. It's some consistency, and it's really kind of taking a look in the mirror, taking a look at what are my important goals for myself, and then not just shooting for the stars as far as like the big, hairy, audacious weight goal, but really kind of internalizing the fact that if my overwhelming overriding goal right now was just to be, let me stop any yearly increase in what the scale does, that would be a great first step. And that might even encompass a couple of steps that would be really worth pursuing right there. Let me kind of get that under my belt and really kind of internalize that. What would I need to do there? Well, you need to take daily action, right? On most days. And it doesn't have to be perfect. It can be messy. It's probably going to be messy, at least at some times. But really it's establishing what does that kind of boundary look like for myself? And that's kind of your first pillar for a fasting lifestyle right there. And there's always going to be time to tackle the big, hairy, audacious weight goal, and that could start today as well. But you can't put the cart before the horse, in that, hey, I need to get the 30 pounds off, or I need to get the 27 pounds off, and then I'll worry about how to keep it off. Like, let's flip that thinking, which is kind of anti-diet, diet culture mentality, but I think is much more productive and realistic for making this work for us, for the long haul.
And the reality is, again, it starts with us, right? So we're going to talk about how to have the conversation with your kids. For us, adults, we don't grow anymore vertically, right?
True.
We only grow horizontally.
Yep.
So my kids hear me say that, right? Like, they know it. So there is a broader societal factor driving the epidemic, because it's deeply rooted in our broken food system, right? So 60% of kids' diets right now are ultra processed. Junk food is cheaper and aggressively marketed to teens. There's limited access to real nourishing food in certain areas. So we've really engineered a system that makes our kids sick. So I don't care where I'm going to say this, and I'm going to get messages from people, and I don't care. But I think we can agree that as a country here in the US, we spend more than any other country on the planet when it comes to our healthcare. But America is sick, and it's now showing up in our kids, and that's not okay. So regardless of where you fall on the spectrum, like, can we just agree that we have a problem? And you can label it "Make America Healthy Again." I don't care. Label it whatever you want. I don't care where you fall, on the left or the right or anywhere in between. We have a problem. And it has to start with us to be able to fix it. Because we've been following the system, we've been using the healthcare system, we've been following the recommendations, and this is where we are. So we can't go, oh, it's not my fault, it's his fault. No, it's up to us. And we need to start in our homes, in our relationships, by the actions that we take. So when we're talking about, parents and grandparents, we're not just role models, right? I like this term, health architects.
How's
So
that?
kids' metabolic health tracks closely with home habits, and it's not just genetics. So we need to build routines around whole food nutrition, movement, minimizing the refined, processed, sugary exposure that kids are getting at a much younger age.
Hmm.
And how do we put boundaries and how do we talk about this, right? So we want to model like this metabolic health at home. So you need to know your numbers. You need to know your A1C, your lipids, your fasting glucose numbers. Now, I'm not saying test your kids, right? Unless you have a medical situation where you need to.
Hmm.
But we also need to like normalize some fasting windows. And I'm going to say this again, we're not telling you to have your kids fast.
Right.
My kids in my house inherently fast because
Sure.
we've taught them to listen to their hunger cues and listen to their body. And we'll give you some real like analogies you can use to have these conversations.
Hmm.
So for us, I grew up in a house where we had dinner, we always had dessert, and then there was always a post-dinner popcorn, ice cream,
Yep.
so we have a rule in this house, no snacking after dinner. Kitchen closes at 7:30. If dinner was late, kitchen closes at 8. Nothing great happens after 8.
I like
If
it.
the kids want a snack later in the evening, they now know to go to protein or to fruit, to things that are going to nourish their bodies, right?
Yeah.
And on a high activity day, active play, daily walking, we don't do screens. The kids do have an iPad, but it's very limited. And we have open conversations. My kids see my wife working on her health. They see me going to the gym. My son last night actually told me, Dad, I think you should go sit in the sauna. And then I think you should put on a podcast and get your workout in. And I was like,
Oh,
okay, that's what I'm
thanks,
doing
coach.
tomorrow. That's what
Thanks,
I'm doing
coach. Yeah.
tomorrow morning, son.
Yep.
Thank you.
You know what? My daughter will see my recovery on my Whoop. She'll take my phone. She'll scroll over. Dad, what'd you get on your recovery last night? And if it's yellow, like if it's anything besides green, she's gonna ask me a few questions, and then she's gonna make a few recommendations for the following day. So it's like, thanks, coach. I mean, these things really do ingrain, especially when our kids or grandkids kind of see us taking an active role in that. Like they want to be part of that, and it can't help but naturally internalize for them too.
Yeah.
This becomes their self-talk as well.
And so my kids know that I'm working on my belly. I've had a belly, the big strong man in the off-season belly for years. I used to power lift, and visceral adiposity started at a young age for me. Lots of restaurant business years, lots of late nights, lots of cramming, lots of school, lots of studying, wearing no sleep as a badge of honor.
Yeah, me too.
Right? So they know that my goal is not to be skinny, or my wife's goal to be skinny. It's to be strong and fit. Right? My daughter's about to do her first triathlon.
Wow.
This weekend.
That's cool.
Super cool, right? And we didn't just be like, hey, you have to do this. She wanted to do it based on the things that we do as a family. Now, are we perfect? Freaking hell no.
Right.
Like, I shared a story inside of coaching last week where I made a great decision taking the kids to the movie. Mom was at a CrossFit competition. And then that night, Mom and I had a date night, and I ate the giant pretzel that was incorrectly delivered to our house. And then I had my normal dinner. And then I finished some of my wife's nachos that she gets. We have this great place here called On the Curb. It's farm to market. They've got organic meats and stuff. And I decided to finish those. And then I went into a food coma. And then I woke up the next day feeling like crap. My fasting that day on Sunday, I typically fast on Sundays anyway, because I like Monday to be really clear and no brain fog and good sleep to set myself up for success on the week. And I don't do it every week, but I do like to fast on Sundays. And Sunday sucked. I didn't feel good. My sleep was disturbed. I was warm all day. And then finally, come Monday, I was back on track. So by no means are we, throwing stones from a glass house here. But here are some of the things that we do to be the leader by the actions you take, to have the conversations with your kids, either as a grandparent or a parent. So we teach our kids to follow the hunger cues, use food as fuel, and we tell them what carbs, protein, and fat do for their bodies. So I say to my kids, my son this morning, Dad, I'm not hungry. Okay, great. Sister was hungry. Sister had breakfast. Son did not. So explain to them it's normal to feel hungry sometimes and full at other times. Hunger is your body's way of saying it needs more energy, but help them identify the difference between hungry, bored, or thirsty.
That's great. I like that.
My 8 and 6 year old can do this. My 3-year-old, obviously not. He's a little Tasmanian devil right now,
Hmm.
right? So encourage them to pause and ask, am I really hungry, or do I just want a snack because I'm bored or upset about the fight I just had with my brother?
Hmm.
And then celebrate the fullness signals. So my wife works and still struggles with this to this day, her satiety signals. She's got an empty leg. When she starts eating something, she's going to eat until past full. Now she's worked so hard to have a DEXA scan that shows she has no visceral fat left after 3 pregnancies
Wow.
by the systems that she follows and the system that works for her. But we're teaching our kids, it's like, my tummy feels comfortable now versus the clean your plate mentality that I grew up with.
Right, right, right. Yeah,
There's
absolutely.
starving kids in Africa. Finish your food.
Even
Well,
just the
no.
word full, even like are you full? That's kind of like that's kind of building in the implication that you should feel full, you should kind of feel stuffed, you should feel uncomfortable. So I really like that. Do you feel comfortable? Does your belly feel comfortable? Because it will give you signals, but those signals oftentimes do lag behind the eating. Like the brain gut connection takes a few minutes. There's a bit of a lag time depending on how quickly you're eating and what your food choices are. The more natural and whole foods they are, the better those cues come in quickly. But still, there's a bit of a lag time. So I'm feeling comfortable now rather than I'm feeling full. Just changing that verbiage.
Yeah, and explain that food is fuel.
Yeah.
Food is fuel.
Yeah.
So, like, compare the body to a car or a superhero. Just like a car needs gas to go, your body needs fuel for energy, needs food for energy. The better the fuel, the better you feel, play, sleep, and the more fun you can have. Right?
Wow.
So, eating well helps them run faster, focus in school, play longer, sleep better. So, we tell our kids carbs are good for quick energy and for playing and learning. Right? But we teach them the difference between sugar and carbs versus carbs that come from fruit and sourdough bread, right? And those types of things.
Yep.
And then protein builds strong muscles, helps you heal, supports growth, meat, fish, eggs. And then fat. This supports your brain and helps you keep you full and warm and comfortable. Cheese and nuts and avocados. We have all of these things readily available. Now, do they still have the protein Cliff Bar? Yeah. Do we still have the protein cookies for when they want a snack? Yeah, we do. But it's not this bad food, good food list. It's what is the food doing for them, right? And then engaging with them. But this has to start with us. We need to do it most of the time. Again, we are not perfect. We don't have it all figured out. Some days I'm just trying to survive. Other days I'm like, holy crap, we've arrived.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Yeah, could every day be like this, which of course the answer is no, but you strive for that, and you strive for the 80-20 rule where you're hitting those, those marks, those consistent singles and doubles 80% of the time, right? And just the other day I was at the grocery store with my 2 big kids, and there's a certain like fruit jerky that they like, and it just has one ingredient. It's just the fruit.
Oh, what brand is that? We have it.
Solely.
Yeah, solely.
Yeah. And it's good.
It's like a giant fruit chew.
Right. And they have a couple of them that they add some dark chocolate to them as well, and things like that. But I think the most they have is 2 or maybe a 3 ingredient if it's a multi-fruit one. But so anyway, it's basically most of them are just the fruit. But the kids know, and we had a conversation about this, about how that's still processed, and so it's not quite as good as the whole fruit itself, right? It might be the same number of calories as the whole fruit, but just put into five bites maybe, if that, and like it might take 20 or 30 seconds to eat it versus a few minutes, and so the body does respond a little bit differently to it. And so understanding even that, which is like, hey, we might get a few of those for the week, but we're also going to get the fruit as well, and just encouraging them to make the good choice, and not always just getting the processed thing because it's convenient for every single day. And so in that regard, there's a ratio, there's a dose, there's an amount of that comes in across the week and across the month that then leads to physiological effects on them as well. So helping them to understand the difference, and again, not like restricting these certain foods, but hey, I'm gonna control the proportion of things that come in, so that the choices kind of become more intuitive for them, and then they get to continue making those choices.
And this is the whole concept is, and by no means do we have it figured out, but this is what's been working well for us is be
Right.
positive, not restrictive.
Agreed.
So emphasize on what to include, not what to avoid. And use the everyday moments that you just described. So my kids are now making decisions and making their own breakfast in the morning. They're packing and telling us what they want in their lunches. So discuss these things at the grocery store when packing lunches or at dinner. And encourage the kids to participate, right? So what foods do you think will help you feel your best today? What foods do you think will help you study or learn that memorization that you're exercise or spelling bee you're doing at school, right? Ask them questions. How does your stomach feel right now? Hungry, comfortable, or just okay? Like, can you spot something on your plate that gives you energy? Something that helps you build muscle? Something that helps your brain function, right? And then to your point, eating a little bit of each helps fuel our bodies so we can run like superheroes. Because one of my kids is in a superhero phase. He's a dragon one day, and then he's a Batman the next day, and then he's Hulk the next day. And then my other son's really into cars. So
Yeah.
what fuel can we put in the car so it can work better, so it can go faster, right? And
Yeah.
there's this
I like
old
that.
adage out there that I grew up in, and we hear this from thousands of people. Because when we start talking about this stuff, yeah, my pattern started young. Finish your plate, starving kids in Africa, the lifestyle that we grew up in, the after dinner snacking. So
Yep.
we really do like an 8 to 8 for our kids. That's when the kitchen's open, the pantry's closed. After dinner, no more snacks. You want a snack, get it now. Dinner's closed, right? Like, we're not going to be doing this, right
Right.
before bed. We're just not going to do it.
Yeah, why would I fuel my body right before I'm trying to put it into a sleep state? Like that
Yeah.
doesn't, you don't need more jobs to do within your body at that
But
point.
Dad, I'm hungry. Okay, are you really hungry? Well, I know he didn't really eat dinner that night because he didn't really like it. So
Sure.
is it a bad thing for him to have a cheese stick and an apple? No, absolutely not. Let's add a
Yeah.
little bit of almond butter or peanut butter to it for sure. But there is this adage out there that this is for you grandparents, that when you get the grandkids, it's open season,
Mm-hmm.
right? It's treats and snacks and all of these things. I just want to encourage you that yes, as a family, we do have movie days and movie nights with pizza and popcorn. We do go out for ice cream, but we control those variables and we look forward to them as an experience as a family, not focusing just on the food itself, if that makes sense.
Yeah, not just a food free for all, like kind of just for the fun of it, you know? And I think all of these conversations are they're really good ones to have, even if they feel a little bit uncomfortable now, or you're hearing these things going like, man, I could never say that to my kids, or I could never kind of draw that line. Well, don't be so quick to say that, because a small step in that direction really is progress. It's momentum, and you might be surprised by how quickly and easily and more intuitively it kind of becomes after you just go, you know what, I'd like to maybe just take a small step in that direction, so that I could plan for some bigger improvements over time. Rome wasn't built in a day, as they
Right.
say. I have no idea how long it took to build Rome, but I'm assuming it was a lot longer than a day. And starting something new like this, or dialogue within the family or your friend circle, or whatever it may be, it can feel a little bit different at first, but essentially it kind of starts with, hey, these are my goals. This is why it's important to me. And if somebody's asking you, or they're kind of challenging you on why you're doing something, especially your kids should be challenging you all the time, right? Like if you pick
I
up a
think
new
that's
habit.
inherently the definition of a kid.
Yeah. And so, I mean, you pick up a new habit or something like that, or you're doing something different, your kids are probably going to be maybe the first ones to call you out on it. So, having something ready for what you're going to say as far as why it's important to you is usually enough for them to go, oh, okay, cool, that makes sense. And then all of a sudden, they're usually pretty quickly on board and supportive. I mean, they want to see you as the best, healthiest version of you. They know when mom or dad or grandma and grandpa show up in a way that they're happy and healthy and excited
Yep.
to be in the room, that makes them excited. Like
Yep.
they want more of that. So it's great, and it really does create really quick momentum and kind of a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, like a self-perpetuating cycle.
So I truly believe, as we wrap up, control what you can control, right? So we know, and this is it's on our heart. It's part of my motivating factor every single day. It's part of my why, is to break the generational path of the health of my family, of my wife's family and my family, because all the grandparents, all the aunts and uncles, right, are living in that medical state, the state of the union that we outline when it comes to the staggering health statistics that we have. So parents and grandparents, it's up to us. We're health architects. Kids, they don't know. So it's going to track closely with those home habits. It's not just genetics. So we need to build those routines. So adults, know your numbers. Stick to your fasting windows. Make a better food choice, right? For us in this house, we got 12-12 schedule, 8 to 8. Kitchen's closed, right?
Mm-hmm.
Emphasize real food. Minimize the ultra-refined processed sugary stuff. Make cooking a ritual, right? My kids are now helping with their lunches and getting their own snacks and making their own breakfast, right? We give them the options that they can have. And the last one I was going to mention, but then got derailed, was have an open conversation about this stuff. So remove the shame, right? So my kids know that dad's working on his belly because I've got 5.6 pounds of visceral fat left. I started with over 12.
Wow.
Right?
That's awesome.
So they know when my son says, Daddy, you got a fat belly, like my wife's like, uh-oh, initially. And I'm like, it's okay. Yeah, I'm working on it.
Mm-hmm.
This is what I'm doing. This is why I'm doing it. Right? Now the 3-year-old, again, who cares? Right? He'll tell, I hate mom, I hate dad, love mom, love dad. It's like whichever way the wind goes because hormones are going crazy and he's growing like a string bean, right? But the reality is be open about it, right? You don't need to share your whole health history, but just be open about why you're doing what you're doing because kids are intuitively, they know. They're smart. They can learn. And ultimately, it's up to us. I'm not going to put my faith in the external that the powers that be are going to give us the answer. The new GLP-1, the new fad, the new thing. It really starts with us. It starts in the home. It starts with these conversations. But most importantly, it starts with our actions as an individual. And then we have that trickle-down effect. So, we want to know where we're at. We want to encourage you that this is a family-centric, solution, and that you now have some of the understanding and hopefully some motivation to make some of these changes. So just pick one thing. Just pick one thing from today that resonated with you. If you're looking for more support, Tommy, they can head to the show notes. You can join one of our fasting challenges. You can grab the insulin assessment. You can grab the blueprint to fasting for fat loss, which will give you some fasting schedules and some of the science and the who, what, when, where, and why behind why we do what we do. But more importantly, just know that this is something that's heart-centric for us, that's family-centric for us. And part of the mission at Fasting for Life is to pull one person out of the matrix at a time and help you realize that this is a marathon, not a sprint, that it's not just about the silly number on the scale, but it's truly about health, longevity, and impact for us. So hopefully today's conversation, Tommy, delivered some of those messages and some of those takeaways. But I'm really glad that we had this conversation, man. I appreciate it as always, and we'll talk soon.
Yeah, me too. Thank you. Bye. So, you've heard today's episode, and you may be wondering, where do I start? Head on over to thefastingforlife.com and sign up for our newsletter, where you'll receive fasting tips and strategies to maximize results and fit fasting into your day-to-day life.
While you're there, download your free Fast Start guide to get started today. Don't forget to subscribe on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Make sure to leave us a 5-star review, and we'll be back next week with another episode of Fasting for Life.